Good morning. Welcome. Hope you can see me and hear me well. Welcome into this morning. I think the gods have decided to take their shower all together today, everywhere. Raining in most of the places. So, welcome back. If you're here for the first time, special and warm welcome. If you're listening to the recording, welcome to you as well.
We can't see you, George.
No?
No, I can't anyway.
Well, I can see myself on the screen, and I saw you when you came in, Christopher.
Yes.
So, does anyone else have the same problem? Just let me know in the chat, please. I think Clive was saying the thumbs up. Yes, Clive Martinez can see me. Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry, Christopher. Well, anyway, you don't need to see me. I can see you. So, okay, Henry, thanks. Let's see if this gets better. No, I can't see myself either. I think we have a few glitches this morning, probably with the bandwidth. This is connection. So we'll move into the session. Christopher is going to keep on leading us through fear is not what we think it is, and we'll be here for the next hour. Okay, see, most people seem to be having a good image, and so that's what's important. You know that by the end we'll have a short period for Q&A, and if you wish to have your questions answered, please use the chat box, questions in capital letters, then the question. If you want to come on screen, you have your digital hand. Just click on the hand, and I'll make my best to bring you on. Last piece of talk from me is about Dharma, of course, the Buddhist practice of generosity, Dharma that sustains this platform and sustains us all as a Sangha here. So we don't have any other kind of revenue but your donations. If you feel inclined to donate, please feel free. I will let you have the link. If not, and you can't donate, your circumstances don't allow it to, please stay with us and continue practicing your presence, your practice, which is already a very good, generous action. So, all from me. Hand it over to Christopher. Hope we can still see each other properly. Thank you, friends. Have a good session.
Thank you. Let's have a quiet minute together. A very warm welcome to each and every one of you. It's the fourth session, and let's like to give a brief summary of the previous 3 days. So on the Monday session, which in fact was recorded the following day, the theme was memory and fear. Fear requires a contraction and it requires the influence of the past on the present. The past may be painful memory, repeating. It may be a very difficult situation that you experienced. It may not have any specific obvious memory to it. It could be a habit. And when something arises in the present or relationship to the future, a contraction comes in, and it's rather inexplicable. And this, for some, may experience as sensations in the body. On Tuesday with you, I spoke more about the immediacy there, and in the theme of fear is not what you think it is, we quite often assume that the body's sensations, or certain kinds of them, is the confirmation of the fear. It isn't. It's a confirmation, yes, of some reaction, confirmations of something old, but fear is the contraction. So what that means is, if we're not feeling those sensations, they won't get stronger. That would require thinking in an unhealthy way about it. And in having a view, these are just sensations, they're not what they think I think they are, some relaxation can take place, and one can respond to situations. May still be some unsatisfactory feelings, sensations in the body or in the mind or both, but you can still respond because you haven't contracted around those sensations. And then yesterday, I gave priority to communication and being very mindful and careful with this in terms of situations, whether at home or at work or with family or whatever, that we liberate, we free up our voice. Rather than be passive, contracted, and disguise it with equanimity or being in the silence, we see what's going on with ourselves and we learn to find our voice. Sometimes we may not have the answer. I took as an example the situation in Israel and Palestine currently. And that may require, or in other personal situations, meditating on, reflecting on what is another way of looking at this situation which has ethics to it, concern to it, and we develop that so we actually know what we're talking about. And that then provides a non-fearful and non-angry voice. Anger is an outcome of many factors, and fear is one of those factors, as we see with the ideologies of the nation state and more there. And today, with the theme with you, it will be on this expansion and contraction. And I'd like to go into that with you in practical ways, and with the various themes, all are applicable, workable, usable in the daily life. And just with regard to that, we sometimes in the mindfulness world, the manifestations of it in its secular forms, there has come about quite some reliance, in my view, on scientific evidence. I am not a fan of scientific evidence with regard to this, in fact, and therefore statistics, scientific statistics, take a priority of the value or the worth or not of something. These teachings are not scientific based at all, they are experience based. Your experience is what matters, not what the statisticians say. And if your experience is working for you, your experience of listening, reflecting, meditating, communicating is working for you, trust in your experience. there, regardless of what the external authorities say. Let's have a quiet minute again. And with the period of time, it's divided up into the talk, followed by a guided meditation on today's theme, followed by any questions in the chat column or in the spoken, and that's how we're using the hour. So let's have the quiet minute. I have a morning sip of the water here. All right. The overarching theme of these days that we have together is from fear to fearlessness. It's present, significant. It's can be summarized in going from another language, but it's the same meaning, from feeling contracted to knowing and experiencing being expansive. And I'm going to go back and forwards with the concepts. Fear to fearlessness, contracted to expansive. Both here in this time with you this morning mean the same thing. So we look at our experience and we see at times some contraction taking place. It's not only fear, of course, that contracts us. It's boredom, it's anger, it's lots of doubt, it's blame, it's agitation, it's anxiety, it's stress. And so problematic states of mind are confirmation there is some contraction in the being, and in these times we are in the spell of it. We'll take anger for the moment. Sometimes you will hear from others. This is like sideways step. We need anger. We have a right to be angry with what's going on in the world, etc. And people, obviously, with language, are free to use it in that way. Which begs the question, well, when do you know when there's enough anger? Would you be able to say, okay, I've got enough anger, I'll now drop it? You'd be lucky. So in these teachings, anger, without exception, is always problematic. Always. It's an unresolved state of mind, like with fear, underneath in the background, in the history, in the memory, in the conditioning of the old. It's problematic, and the reason it's problematic is because it blocks the opportunity, gets in the way, like a dark cloud in front of the sun. It gets in the way of clarity and a wise response. If, with anger, to take this one here, it might be worthwhile when you're feeling angry, whoever, whatever it is about, and if it's manifesting in activity, could be violent. If it's manifesting in the voice, aggression, and the tone, or the coldness in the voice, if it's manifesting in emotion and feelings and thoughts. It could be a very useful question to get, so to speak, behind the anger to start the journey. What is the fear? What am I afraid of? And just getting behind it, so to speak, may begin to recognize what the patterns are going on. And underneath that anger and underneath that fear, it might be then question, what is the insecurity? What am I trying to control? So one question, experience, reflection, feeling within, going deeper with it, being contributes to some dissolution of the anger, dissolution of the fear, connection with the insecurity. If we can stay quietly with that insecurity, the inner life will be less contracted, and perhaps even the insecurity can fade, and we feel quite grounded and centered when we're at our best to be able to respond. So the teachings are teachings always, in a way, going deep, looking at the initial, what's called nimitta, image, presentation, what's in the foreground of the problematic, raising a question, yes, being clear, no denial. What's the primary cause and conditions for it? Anger, fear. What's the primary cause and condition for fear? Insecurity. And other aspects may also come in, so that we are dedicated to going from contraction to expansion, from fear to fearlessness. Another sip of the water here. It's a practice, remember, always a practice. Practice sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we're keen to liberate the being, to free it up from the oppression inside of ourselves, which oppresses our view, our wisdom, our ability to respond. Not only are we oppressed by the outside, all the conditioning and pressure on us, but we're also sadly oppressed from within as well. It's a kind of occupation of the old in consciousness, serious occupation. Then looking again in another way here, with the with the contraction that arises, like everything else, it's impermanent, and it's a key to understanding impermanence. Sometimes it's used as a jargon. Oh, everything is impermanent. The Buddhists use this a lot. I'm not a Buddhist, by the way. Everything is changing. Things are just arising and falling. It's part of the language, but it's a kind of language which seems a bit lightweight to me. And I think it's, in its deeper sense, it is to be applied in a certain way. Nobody can be aware of impermanence all the time. Nobody, not a Buddha, nobody, not possible. So it's an application when necessary. So this is what I have in mind. You experience the arising, dependently arising, as I mentioned a moment ago, of fear. And as I pointed out previously, maybe in its feeling emotional form, maybe complete absence of that. The feeling heart life is kind of gone dry, it's gone dead, and it lies exclusively and narrowly in the way of thought. And then Either way, it passes. Nothing absolute, it just passes. It arises like a summer storm. It stays for a while, it's dark and rainy, whatever, and it passes. The period when it's passed by, and that could be right now, you may not feel fearful of or angry about anything or problematic state of mind there. It's a blessing, of course, but it's also important to have some sense as a meditation and reflection on periods of time in which you feel pretty expansive. Therefore, there isn't a lot going on with your thinking, the day-to-day normal kind of thinking. Feeling emotional life doesn't feel tied down, doesn't feel to be boxed in. So in other words, you might be experiencing some warmth, interest, curiosity, contentment, happiness, and more. And these experiences are some reflection of the experience in a general way of feeling expansive. You're open, not open naively, not open to being hurt, but you're open with some wisdom to support your openness. And with all of this, we wish to be quite clear and comfortable right now, and I would say it could be really right now. What is arising for you doesn't feel problematic nor contracted. Your recognition and your awareness of that has two benefits. One benefit is you have seen, you have witnessed, and you have experienced, which is your evidence, this problematic fear, which we identified with. It came for a while, it stayed for a while, and it passed. And therefore, you have personally, directly witnessed its arising, staying, and passing. In other words, its impermanence. It's changed. It arrived in consciousness, it's now out of consciousness. So in the daily life, the regularity, if you don't remember, mindfulness means remembering. Mindfulness is not confined into the box of being in the here and now as much as possible. It's an extraordinarily tragic, limited view of what mindfulness is about. So in the mindfulness there, with and recognizing the expansiveness, you are reflecting. That means you're turning your attention to the past in a skillful way. Say, well, I was in this contracted state. It came and it went. So the expanse is feeling, and we're not talking about a great mystical expanse, a great huge spiritual experience, a liberation of that, how expansive life is. It can be of that. However, even the modest sense of expansiveness is some mirror of what the expansiveness is, which is truly awakening, truly liberating, and it's so expansive, it is not in the prison of impermanence. Therefore, if it's not in the prison of impermanence, it's the expansiveness is accommodating, it's so expansive, of birth and death, and including the birth and death of you and me. And we're deeply interested in expansiveness. It's not that it's so foreign to us, it's so alien, it's there. Because if we are thinking like that, the tendency will reveal that there is some magnification. We're projecting expansiveness, this incredible expansiveness and gosh, I hope one day I'll reach it. No, no, no. We have it in the ordinary and the everyday. So therefore, the Buddhist language, Dharma language at the moment, in the absence of the hindrances, in the time, that means the desire and the pursuit of pleasure as a maximum priority in life, which in fact is, in my view, a complete waste of existence living like that. Second is the anger I spoke to you about in various shades, from violence to blame and fault finding. Third is dullness, boredom, apathy, loss of interest, and all that goes with it, and sometimes depression and really problematic ones as well. Fourth is restlessness in the mind, anxiety, feelings and sensations about the present and future. And the fifth, as we're exploring these days together, fear, and sometimes fear and doubt very much mixed up together. So when those are not problematic, not troubling us, consciousness, being a conscious human being, we feel more expansive. So we want to recognize the movement, so to speak, between contraction and expansion, between fear and experiences of fearlessness. These experiences of fearlessness comes with clarity and comes with wisdom. And what I have in mind with the fearlessness, still maybe the feelings, sensations I've spoken to you already about going on, but there is the quiet capacity to respond to situations. And always with this, there is, like this morning with you, the general principle, and then there is the action. Now, to give you an example, actually from the social media, which I read perhaps maybe a year or two ago. Just incidentally, this is on a personal level, last year, or maybe a couple of years ago or so, I deleted my Instagram account. I didn't want to be associated with Instagram because of the way it, my view, has manipulated people, particularly teenagers, with all the images and so on that goes forth, and all the distress and sometimes thoughts of self-harm that have arisen with teenagers. And there's not been enough care and support because making money matters more than well-being. And the other with Twitter, now renamed X, and the treatment of the staff by the new owner, and the superficiality of much, which is that I do not want to be connected with that either. So I deleted. I read a story. A mother was sitting, this is an example of fearlessness, in her armchair at home with her baby in the arms. And she was going through on her mobile phone photographs of her baby. And she suddenly stopped and she said, "Oh my God, what am I doing? I have this beautiful baby in my arms and I'm looking at pictures when I have the real here, not the virtual." This woman worked in the marketing department of Instagram. And over the weekend, she started reflecting. And a single thought that arose in her mind was, "Oh my God, I'm in the marketing of Instagram. I'm finding every strategy, methodology in the marketing to get people out of the real world and into the virtual reality. Reality is into the virtual, not even a true reality, into the virtual. She went in on the Monday morning and she resigned. That takes some determination. That takes some living of the values, making a shift. And there, of course, is risk involved, risk with loss of income, risk of losing colleagues and friends, working for Instagram. But the voice which is listening and willing to take the steps there is a voice which says the real and the authentic matters. There's an expansion to it, and the virtual, by its very definition, is finite. It is limited when we are habitually identified with it. There's an important extra line here, when we are habitually identified with the virtual. Because that means we are contracted around it, and we are a slave to it. It is not our servant. And if you wish to know what liberation is, if you deeply wish, if you deeply wish to know what an awakened life is, what the profound expansion really is, then there are some deep questions to ask, and that deep questions may take the form of, go back to my earlier question, is the social media, and remember, I'm using it now, you are using it, we have our mobile phones, we have our gadgets, or whatever. Is it such a priority that we've contracted from the real world, pulled ourselves habitually into this? And when I read in a report of some, I think this is in the US, 2,000, this is the statistics at the moment, 2,000 people were interviewed, and this was 2 or 3 years ago, and were asked roughly how much time a day you spend on your mobile phone. And everybody was asked did not work for a mobile phone company. So it was just their personal use. 48% said 5 to 6 hours a day. 48%. And some more and some less. And there's something habitual. With that, we then find ourselves, rather than the servant, contracted around it, limited by it. Not only could we be spending 10 or 20 years in a life of 80 years, quarter of our life, or even more, in this contracted space, but also it makes it more difficult to deal with the expanse of life and all that's taking place in it. We could revolutionize this world if we reduced our dependency and our fear of being without our mobile phone or whatever it might be. And if we significantly reduced it and said, I want to live in the real world, I want to feel the day, I want to feel the weather, I want to feel people, I want to feel the nature, I want to feel being alive in the vibrancy of it there. And that can free up and liberate up really precious actions and concerns and engagement. And then we go back to our mobile phone. We go back to our YouTube. We go back to our communications, and we're using them mindfully and carefully because we know the first is the real world. I don't want to be afraid of it by contracting myself into a superficial virtual reality in which there are thousands of people working hard every day to maximize our dependency on it. No wonder the world is in such a state. No wonder it is. Losing touch with the expanse, and we're selling our soul by being dependent on the virtual. It's a serious issue. And children with the mobile phones, and the teenagers and the work people, and whoa. So, coming back, how am I doing for time here? Oh my God, I'm just warming up here. All right, last couple of sentences. Looking at the time on the computer here. Please, in the daily life, feel the expanse. Please spend more time in the expanse, sky above, earth below, and much, much more. Be receptive to. Reflect on the absence of contracted states of mind, such as fear. Work with all of that. Use your powers of reflection. Use your powers of reflection as well to see today, what steps can I take to really feel the expanse of life? And remember, the nature is indoors and outdoors. There is outdoors and indoors, yes, of course, but nature doesn't have that division. So what that means, this very desk in front of me is made of wood. All the materials in this home of mine, like yours, is all expressions, modifications and changes in the nature there. So see what your day is, explore it fully, feel the expanse, feel it, sense it, recognize it more and more, and the expanse will expand, and it will be extraordinarily limitless, truly expansive. And the expansive, it's so expansive, yes, it does include the virtual. It's not a dual, but the virtual is a tiny, small expression. See its usefulness, see its benefits, and see very clearly its limits. And then we get the perspective right, and happiness, a stress-free life, expansive way of being, and that releases much love and friendship, power, empowerment, and engagement. All right, enough. Thank you for lending an ear. Let's have the quiet minute together. Okay, I'd like to offer a guided meditation for 10 minutes or so. So just sitting with the full upright posture. Something quite lovely, just sitting with a tall posture. It is also rather expansive. When we're in the grip of fear, for example, the grip can be so strong that we contract, we shrivel, we get smaller, we get afraid, we tighten up, the whole body goes smaller and smaller. We've got so contracted about something which we can't bear. And sometimes, wow, just the changing of the posture can be a useful first step to breaking out of the fear. So we sit tall. We experience the expanse of the form of the body from a contracted state. We are experiencing the authenticity of the real. Nothing virtual about it at all. It's a fact. It's a truth of life. Truth and real are somewhat synonymous. So the relationship to the body in this case is not a contraction away from the expanse, but with our posture, we can authentically experience the expanse of the body as a manifestation and the confirmation of the limitless expanse which is greater than this universe. We can expand a little further with our consciousness and experience the space around us. The space which enables us to be receptive to the colours and the shapes and the light passing through our eyelids or experienced in our eyelids when our eyes are closed. And the space in our ears to be able to hear the speaker, as an example. Experience the expanse through the breathing with the space in our nostrils, as well as the space to smell. This can be such a protection and a safeguard. Smelling of gas, as an example. And then there's the space in our mouth and the remarkable capacity with food and drink, with the multiplicity of the taste buds. We can distinguish in a moment the taste of what we eat, of what we drink. So we eat mindfully, nourishing food and drink, to maximize the expanse, the range, the diversity of the tastes. And then with the physical, so it's eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch. The feet on the floor, the backside touching the chair, the temperature around touching the cells of the body, the touch of the clothes, maybe the two hands touching each other in the lap. All reflecting the mutual support, the interconnectedness, and the great expanse of all of this everywhere. So we meditate on this, we reflect on this, we experience this regularly, daily. And then out of this, there's the opportunity to respond to situations in an expansive way rather than contracted, in a fearless way rather than fearful. So we begin to realize and know what it is to live authentically in the real world. Remaining minute or two. May all beings explore any contracted states of mind and contribute to their fading, to their dissolution. May all beings remember to be in touch with the expansive. See the wisdom, may all beings see the wisdom of being in touch with the expansive and bring it to all situations. All right, thank you. So, classes, chat column, Allah. So some questions here, and don't hesitate to put the hand up. So, yeah, I would love to hear your personal description of mindfulness, Christopher. I find it such a problematic word. Of course, my love of the Buddha and the tradition. And mindfulness is a reasonably good translation of sati, which is the Pali word, but doesn't convey the breadth of it. And it is a little problematic. A little problematic because its application varies. And I think it's unfortunate that we have come to define it about being in the here and now. So when using the word mindfulness, I use it, teacher of mindfulness and so forth, but to expand the meaning. And therefore, reflection is included. The use of memory, remembering to explore the expansive, remembering to look at the contracted. In relationship to the future as well. We're not rejecting past and future, not at all. The here and now doesn't have its own existence. It is an unfolding process that's going on, confirmed through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, feeling, and thinking. It's unfolding. And we want to see well and clearly what is unfolding, recognize the expanse, as I mentioned, recognize the contraction, and find ways to explore present and past and the mutual influence. So all of that. So putting it very simply, hope I haven't complicated it there, it's a significant small step which includes past, present, and future. It includes the importance of the expansiveness. But mindfulness itself is not worth holding on and clinging to. It is not the primary. It is a feature which arises, stays, passes in the great field of life. Enough. All right. Let me see. Jane points out there's a campaign led by adults who felt they were given smartphones too early in life with detrimental consequences. And all these things, this is where the chat column really helpful and useful in checking things out. There. Question. I think you said the other day that seeking pleasure leads to fear. If so, please say more. You're right, I did. So what I have in mind here, many ways that we pursue pleasure. And pleasure is the form of a sensation. I get what I want. And it might be in the world of consumerism, but there's the pleasure of praise. There is the pleasure of name and fame. There is the pleasure of having and getting and all of that. And when we're in that narrow view of existence, we have to keep going with it because we become so dependent on the pleasure. It occupies all our thoughts. I want a lovely holiday. I want to buy this, etc. Got nothing to do with happiness, by the way. It's pleasure. And I just say there is a place for pleasure. a very modest place there. And the reason that it leads to fear, because underneath I will fear losing or breaking my goods, fear of not getting the latest in the consumer culture, fear of losing my good name, fear of losing my money and investments. So really checking in with ourselves, is my love of pleasure, which has a modest place, actually a shadow, and it's confirmed that in any area of pleasure, what's giving me pleasure, I fear to lose it. I fear to lose it. That means you've given far too much emphasis and priority to pleasure. The fear will be the confirmation. That's what I'm talking about. It's a small life. And when the Buddha was asked, what will destroy this world? And his response was, word karma, K-A-M-A, was the blind pursuit of pleasure. And we see it. He was right. The blind pursuit of pleasure. Mattering more than environment, mattering more than creatures and animals, mattering more than life itself. Whoa, 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 whoa. So we're in a radical way of looking at things. Right. What can we do to overcome anxiety? It is linked to fear, right? Right, question. A little bit with the language here. 2 words there. The way I use it, everybody is free to use the language in the way they wish. Stress has a variety of causes and conditions. Not getting what I want would be one. Too much thinking about would be another. Dependency on results, to get peace of mind, getting what there would be another, and several others. And I use stress to mean anxiety, when it's got too much in the immediacy of life, it spills over into the future. And when it spills over into the future, means the stress spills into the future, I call this anxiety. It's a worry about, anxious about, and it's future related. The second is the word overcome. Take care with this word, and therefore it might be useful, coming back to the concepts, if we tend to use the same concepts repeatedly, they get a charge to them. They end up as part of the problem, in this case around anxiety. It might be useful to change that word and to overcome. Feels like I have to do something to overcome. And it might be mildly aggressive. It might be underneath it all a kind of desire to control. So perhaps drop the language, anxiety overcome. Feel the being, relax, that more expensive view we spoke about there. And then quietly ask yourself, and it's more soft and it's regular, what steps could I take to have a different view of the situation or situations. And just pick out one of them if you feel there are lots. What would be a different view? So you relax, you expand the being, you quietly ask questions slowly and mindfully internally there, and you just see what response may come. And you might then write down one or two or whatever. Then you apply that. And as you get more deeper in the being, the anxiety, that means relationship to the future as a problem, may get noticeably less. You get more at ease with, and you're beginning to feel another way. Keep practicing. Change the language as well. Right, I think I'm probably getting, I am right, 9 o'clock. All right. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you for bringing up the issue of smartphone addiction. I was traveling back to the island I live on last week on the ferry. I felt like it was the most beautiful journey I've made on this ferry in 7 years of living here. Hello, Kirsten. It's on the west coast of Scotland. In living here with snow-capped mountains soaked in the red of the morning, I was in awe of the beauty of it all, and in shock at the same time. Around 80% of the people traveling on that ferry did hardly looked up from their phone, hardly from their phone for the duration of the journey. I feel like this is becoming one of the main issues we need to address with mindfulness, to take notice of the world and our being in it. We need to start living in it, again. Hallelujah. 5-star. On the journey in the ferry. Snow-capped mountains, the island ahead, the seas, and people on the mobile phone. How tragic. But it's the same on the London Underground in the morning. There's this diversity of the species going off to work, and new day is beginning, and they're huddled in the contraction. Yeah, it's a major issue. Thank you. All right. So as you know, George very kindly keeps an eye on the questions, and he'll send them over to me. I'll have a look, and we'll endeavour to respond to as many as possible. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Thank you to Sangha Live, and of course a very big thank you for your dana, the donations, which really help in a very real and practical way to support the team and the expansive view of Sangha Live, making these teachings available to everyone who wishes to come to lend the ear. Thank you, and love your day. Bye for now.